So I think the first part of any curriculum should be the elements, not in the periodic table, but the elements that make life: earth, fire, water, air, and only Indian philosophy has the fifth element, which is vital: space. Because space makes a difference to how things function. And I'll give you a simple example. Someone said you were happy that I critique science. Well, I critique reductionist science. I critique mechanistic science. I don't critique system science. I learn from it. Now, there's a concept that has been used repeatedly called substantial equivalence or compositional equivalence. And this has always been used to say this is safe, GMOs are safe, mad cow feed, just taking animals and grinding them up to make feed for the animals, that's sustainable and it's substantially equivalent, because you can work out the right iron, the right amount of calcium, etc. Perfect. The dead cow with the right protein and iron in it. Of course, the cows started to get mad. The cows fed with infected cows started to get mad. 12 people fed burgers from these infected dead cows got CJD, the mad cow disease. Yeah? Eventually, a Nobel Prize was given to the scientist who worked out what was the infection. And they found there was no virus, there was no protein. It was a distorted protein called the prion. It was in composition exactly the same as the original protein. But by feeding the cows a diet which was not their diet, it had twisted that protein in space. So in space, it was a different protein. But in composition, in material terms, it was the same protein. So the prion was, and for me, in genetic engineering, it's exactly the same. That how things are laid out in a genome makes a huge difference. Whether you introduce a new gene makes a big difference. So space is vital. That should be the first, really. And I'm getting a lot of interviews from Western universities because I think this idea is arriving. I think in 3 days' time I have to do a Zoom interview for a new book called Elemental. The elements. They of course think I wake up to elements one fine day. No. It's seeped into our thinking in this country. So that would be very powerful. The second then would be the reason I took time to define sustainability as upholding and dharma as upholding would be another chapter. The right livelihood, the right action. And there's so much literature into which you can tap on this. Then you can have a chapter on each of the elements and a chapter on their relationships. Yeah? A chapter on the earth, the soil and the land, a chapter on fire. Now this is a very powerful concept, because when he was saying the prayer on Agni, Agni is not just burning coal and fossil fuels. Agni is the very power of the universe. Agni is what allows us to digest good food. Agni is what, and if you see, I think I have it here. Because part of it, I was learning from society. I was reading the typical scientific literature. And in the food chapter on milk, I have two images in Staying Alive. One is the milk machine, the cow as a gears and dollars. Yeah, that's how the cow is viewed. And that's why the violence and factory farming and all of that, to which people are reacting, but they don't realize cows can be seen in another context and related to in another context. So the sacred cow, as you know, the sacred cow, the horns are the connection, and the horns are the mountains. Only in the Indian breeds have this hump, which is vital. And every part of the body is part of the cosmos. It's a cosmic cow. So the Agni, the fire, is all transformation. It's not an external input alone. Yeah? And I definitely think you should have a chapter on sharing the earth's gifts. That Isho Upanishad that I taught shared with you, Gandhi, Tagore, you know, you'd be able to do it very rich. Yeah. And I think another element would be limits as not sacrifice, which is how, you know, in a consumerist culture, you say if you have to put a limit, you're somehow punishing yourself. No, if you're holding the system, you'll get more water. You'll get more food. So it is not a deprivation. It is, in fact, enhancing the capacity of the ecosystem. If you support the ecosystem supports you. Everything else I've learned in life, and my two teachers have been nature and communities. So fortunately, all this knowledge is still alive, and part of what Navdania's contribution has been to not let it be erased, to help remember. After all, the Green Revolution is terribly recent. It's the 66. Before that, everyone was doing farming the way Albert Howard is talking about it. Diversity, law of return. And basically, when we connect the knowledge that people have and connect it to the emerging knowledge of science, like rural communities knew the earth is sacred, the soil is sacred, it's living. But, you know, they'd had eyes, they didn't have microscopes. And now with microscopes, you can see the soil food web. And that's why we have a little soil lab, you know. And then you start to connect what microscopes can teach you and what a sacred approach to your relationship with the earth teaches you. And I know a lot of, you know, in North America or across the Americas, a lot of indigenous knowledge becoming the new practice. I know so many farms that have been started. You know, I know Winona LaDuke is a big name in the indigenous community. She came here. I mean, every year we do a Bhumi festival on a different theme. And this year it was on sacred plants and sacred food. And in the year she came, we did it on basically, you know, on women and ecology. And after that, she came here to the farm. And that's when she, you know, she saw the whole seed saving, and she went back and started to save seeds. And now there are all kinds of young people from the indigenous community who are saving their ancient seeds and creating farming communities around that. For India, it's interesting, you know, we have both the trends right now. We've got pick up the worst of the West very fast because that's development. And then you also have a resurrection, you know, people remembering. So, you know, we don't know, but I have a deep faith in the lasting power of the right thing. Yeah, the non-sustainable comes and goes, and then it passes. I can't imagine the love for superhighways lasting beyond 2030. You know, I don't know how much fossil fuel will be available, what price it'll be there, you know. In my book, Soil Not Oil, I've watched the growth of the automobile in this country. If you came earlier, you would have seen cows all over the place. Then the World Bank gave money to India to remove the cows because they were interfering in the sale of fast cars, because they were like a roadblock. And then huge grants came and animals were picked up, and 2,000 rupees was given if you picked up an animal and brought it, you know, to a shelter. But when I did that book, I realized the automobiles had grown, but the number of people owning automobiles was still 4%, as it was in my dad's time. Yeah? So the cars grow, but the percentage of people who are becoming motorized in terms of private ownership doesn't really change, except that others start to have fewer options. So that's a big issue of sustainability always, to see the relationship. Yeah?